where we finished last week. There was some speculation. Are you seriously injured? You have a family emergency? Were you closing a big deal, Q4 deal, or did you just fall asleep? So people have been wanting to know all week. So
Really?
I'll let you. I want you to provide the listeners, the streamers. We'll just make this a streamers delay.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
What went down behind the scenes, behind the curtain of Software Defined Talk?
Well, there's a lot going on here in the Kote's Kotek household all the time. We got, like you said, it is Q4, so we were looking to close it out. Even though
was there like a Nutella sale that was going on?
That's right. So we had to. Luckily, we had identified the procurement officers, and we knew how to work with them. No, I just fell asleep. That's what happened. Well, I think I was upset about something.
Oh, really?
And
you fell asleep when you're. That's actually great. I feel the opposite happens. Like if I'm upset, then I'm less likely to sleep.
Well,
quickly.
it just like focuses my mind on that one thing, and then also we are in the I don't know. You could call it a bad habit, but it's just unhelpful habit of like we have to like put the baby to bed by like being in bed with her. And so like that means when you put the baby to bed, like you usually go to bed, which it reminds me of like I remember at one point Matt Ray was like, if you go on a vacation and your family's all sleeping in one hotel room, you actually get great sleep because everyone goes to sleep at the same time at like 8. Like, you end up going to bed early, which I don't know if that's true as people get older, but I don't know. It's
I find that I find that I just lay in bed and can't sleep longer. That's my what I end up doing when the whole family's together. But maybe that's we have distributed bed times at my house. Everyone seems to go to bed at a slightly different time. Which I think is the key to a healthy life. But like some people have to go to bed when their partner goes to bed. I'm like, I can never.
Oh yeah. We were close to having that figured out, and then we got the baby, and now it's really. It
sounds like the baby was like delivered. It's like, well, the baby came in. I guess the baby was delivered, but it's like
DHL just found a package that had been rattling around in their van. Finally delivered it. But the other kids, it's kind of sad. We used to like read books to the kids when they were going to bed, each of them, because there's 2 parents, and now that just, I don't know, kind of doesn't know.
Isn't this going to be like the third child gets like what's left? Isn't that sort of like how it goes? It's like, well, you're going to have more freedom than the other kids, but you won't get as much attention. Is that the way to think of that?
And none of your clothes are new.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely
use the old paper towels.
All right, I'm trying to find the Twitch link so that we can put it in the Slack because I've not done it correctly many times.
Oh, I have that.
Where is it? I feel like we need to get this automated. Need that last.
What do you say? We're recording. We're streaming. I can write that.
We'll just put it in I guess it's the same one as the last one. Just as long as it's in the Slack somewhere.
There you go.
Oh, perfect. Great. What are you eating?
Well, very uncharacteristic of me. I'm eating microwave popcorn.
I don't know. It's not that good, actually. I was gonna say that's not really that great a snack.
Well,
it's not. It just kind of leaves you wanting more.
Yeah. It actually kind of fits the bill for what I agree with you. It fits the bill, and the problem that I had is I wanted to put some butter on it. I got this nice French butter that has like big salt flakes in it.
All right, now you're talking my language. I like it.
But the microwave popcorn is not hot enough that you can just, it's a block of butter. It's not hot enough that you can just put the butter on there. So now it's finely melted. But, to give a little preview of my recommendation for this week, I also sprinkled some MSG on it. And I think that's doing something.
Oh, now this is going the wrong way, though. I thought the goal was to get rid of MSG. I guess it depends on what you're trying to do.
I think MSG is okay, is what I remember. That it's actually fine.
It is? Yeah. I feel like I've seen lots of things where they say like no MSG added. Like it's good. Like you don't want that, right?
Well, I think there are people who don't like it, but I think that was like an '80s thing. That MSG was bad,
So it's out now. It's like it's back. It's like Atkins.
It's probably because of Tipper Gore that happened.
Was it? I thought that was rap music.
Maybe exactly. That's what I
was. I think somebody else was against food. Maybe Michelle Obama, like eat better.
Mr. T.
Mr. T. Yes, Mr. T. Mm-hmm. Well, I think the cliffhanger this week has been it's been addressed, but Cote, because we're good hosts, we should leave another cliffhanger for next week. So right before this, we started streaming. Matt Ray was on. Mm-hmm. Now it was a little unsure whether Matt Ray could see us.
Yeah, or hear us.
He just said, but it was unclear if it was to us or someone else. It's like, I have to go. And then he immediately shut down his laptop and was off. And we're unclear what that means. So tune in next week where we get to hear Matt Ray explain who he was talking to and where did he actually have to go? What happened, right? We hope, as we did with you, we hope it's only for good reasons.
Not bad
serious reasons. No, nothing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, pretty soon you're gonna have to just do the show on your own, Brandon.
I know. I did think last week was the first time where I was like, "How long can I just talk to myself?" Like because Brian Gracely, he does like the Sunday, the perspective show, and they're like anywhere from probably 15 to 30 minutes. He goes pretty long, and I'm always like, it'd be a good challenge. I think you could do a talk show by yourself. I think you could maybe.
Oh yeah.
I think you could go the longest. I don't think it. And I did. Good way.
I did an hour and 45-minute show myself for one of my Tanzu talks this week on Tuesday. So I definitely can't. Now I did watch videos during it. I started doing that. It's very exciting. I watch videos while I make a video. I feel like I'm finally catching up. I have enterprise reaction videos.
Were you happy with it? It was like something that was.
I was learning about the Spotify project Backstage since we use that on the Tanzu application platform.
Okay, well, Backstage, like it.
And I don't know how you are. It's one of those things where I've watched videos on it several times, and I just instantly tune out and start checking my email, and so I never So I never really catch on to what it is, and so I thought this would be a good way to force myself to actually watch it. And
there's something about that, about having an audience. I'm sort of generally against kind of the live webinar. It's just what's the point? Just make a video. But there is something about demanding someone's presence. Someone else is on the other line, and they're trying to you kind of feel some social. Even though that doesn't always work too. Sometimes someone will be talking, they'll be doing something else. But it's there is some social pressure to pay attention and do it. I think totally. I was saying right before we started, it's actually in a business meeting today, and you kind of forget. I haven't been in one in a while. Being in the room sort of does focus the attention, right? It's I can see everyone, and I can just turn my head when they're talking, and it's much easier. I mean, it's almost kind of surreal, to be oh yeah, this is this is the natural communication of human beings versus just being on these phones. I don't know. I keep hearing a little beep, someone joining. Is that Matt trying to get back in, do you think? Or I haven't seen anything.
But you don't see him on there to let him in?
No. I don't think he said anything on the let's check the Slack here. All right.
I feel like we recorded about half the show already.
Yeah. Well, all right. How's your popcorn? You ready to wrap up on the popcorn? Because that's the level of professionalism we need to get to.
It's really good with the MSG on it. I got to tell you.
When you're done with the popcorn,
all right. I'm going to have one more bite here.
And did you look at the topics? You good with these topics, or you got more?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Let me write down. Okay, popcorn. Okay. Get my recording timestamps. We have one ad read. We gotta get on it. A lot of prospecting, no sales. Gotta get on the sales team, and we gotta get our numbers up.
It's all about FY23.
Yeah, this thing is, we slacked off. Everyone went to club. Now we're just, we're just walking around the office, hanging out, not selling anything. So I'll get on that.
That's good water. Okay.
Are you good? You got a good cold open ready for us?
Sure.
What time is it? Let's see. What's the start?
Man, too bad about Matt Ray. I hope he's okay.
It is funny. I don't know. It's funny. I don't quite. Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happened next week. Maybe he fell asleep. I don't know. Just we'll see. Well, we know he didn't fall asleep. We did see him right before that. It'd be unusual for him to just maybe narcolepsy, but I doubt he fell asleep.
I knew a guy in high school who had narcolepsy.
I wonder if it will be like. Do you think it's an animal induced thing? Like the dog ate glue was one time, right? Like maybe it could be snakes. Yeah, I think maybe it was a house problem. Maybe that's what it was. There was something immediately wrong with the house.
Water leak.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, oh, the washer sprung a leak. I gotta turn off the water or something like that.
Do you think appliance repair people make a joke where they're like, the washer had a bad washer, and they're like, boy, funny every time.
Exactly. All right, how much popcorn we got left? Ready?
I just snuck some in.
I mean, you just like we were ready. You drank the water. You're all set up, and now we're back to stage one. Like,
all right, reset.
Rebuild the system. Build from scratch. You know.
All right, I'm ready.
Ready? You need some water. I think you need some water. You look like you need some water. Okay. I can tell on you. Like you're gonna.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. One ad break. I'm ready. Whenever you are.
One ad break. So I started off the week with a bit of a weird medical problem. Now, I starting on Friday of last week. That's the day, a couple of days before Monday. Like I had this like constant like backache and chest aching. And my jaw was aching. And if you go and read these symptoms...
Oh, don't do that. That's always the worst, but go on.
Yeah. I mean, this is either like, you're about to have a heart attack or you're having some side effect of some like vaccination or something.
Right.
And I had just gotten a booster shot the week before that.
Okay.
And then also like people in my family tend to die of like heart problems. So this is just like all a bunch of no good. So I was even like, I just like had canceled a bunch of things and I was feeling sick. And then of course my wife, who would prefer that I stay alive, was like, you got to go see a doctor. So I've got two things on this topic. Well, one, everything's fine. I mean, there actually was no problems.
Right.
The diagnosis from my doctor was that I'm just getting older. Which I think.
Did you get that in writing or was that just a verbal declaration?
I think that was I didn't actually see what he typed into the medical record system.
Oh, that we need to look up. That we want to go. But go on, yes.
I don't know if Apple Health is syncing with the system that they have. But anyways, there was two very notable things here. One, this was my most thorough interaction with the Netherlands, the Dutch healthcare system, and kind of doctor thing. I've alluded to making fun of how hands off the doctors are around here, or not hands off, how laid back they are. And I think so. Kim had prepared me. She was like, "You're going to go in there, and you really have to advocate for them doing something. Otherwise, they'll just say like, everything's fine, and but you got to get them to run all the tests." And so they, I described all this stuff to them. And I noticed this guy had a skateboard in the back, so I asked him if he skateboarded, and he described, he said he did. He goes skateboarding. He's got to go early in the morning with all the other. He kept using the phrase "old geezers" with all the other. I think he was in his early 50s. All the other old geezers, because later in the day, all the kids come to the skate parks and they fill it up. So and they can skate really well. So that you gotta be there to skate that. So I'm doing the whole thing where I'm trying to like, hey, I'm a person. Let's talk about people stuff. So you just treat me, more
kind of
like
a person. Establish some bond, some personal.
Yeah,
I'm with you,
yeah. And he picked up skating late in life, and his parents also. This is another great little anecdote. People always ask. I don't know how you respond to this. This is because it's always very difficult. People eventually ask me what my job is, and I just am like, I work at a software company, more or less doing marketing. Like, I don't know if they really push me.
You just give like the minimum answer, the minimal, simplest answer that you don't think there'll be a follow-up.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be like, I work on this advocate team, but I don't really talk to developers or advocate for stuff. I don't know. Sometimes I tell people that like I research how large organizations get better at software and whatever. Mm-hmm. But then at some point he was like, oh, my parents, they didn't get me a computer when I was younger, and so I haven't learned it. Everyone around me had a computer, but my parents decided not to have one. And I was like, oh, what? So did you like that? What did you think about that? And he's like, I thought it was pretty fucked up. That's amazing.
Okay.
That was. I'm remembering now. This guy was. He was just a real. He was just a real character. He even said, what I've noticed is if you start to get kind of friendly with Dutch people and you talk with them, of course they want to compare like, American to Dutch stuff or whatever.
Sure. That'd be normal, right?
Yeah. And then the following phrase will come up eventually. They'll figure out a way to work it in. Like I got Dutch health insurance, and the way it works here is like you just type in your it's called a BSN number, which is basically just like your government number, which in the States, there would just be a revolution if we had that.
Right.
Never mind social security
sounds so
numbers.
Easy though. I have to say the way you decide, it's like, gosh, that sounds simple.
Yeah, but it's the equivalent of like how we use a social security number. But so I got new insurance, and you just like basically you just type a BSN number in, and it just like integrates with everything. Like all the.
So it's like a GUID. It's just a unique. That sounds so great. But go on.
Yeah, and then it just knows all your stuff, and you're all set. Right.
Love it.
More or less. And I was like, oh wow, that was great. That would never work in the States, in America. And he was like kind of confused about it. And I had to explain like what happened. He was just like, and I was like, yeah, I'd probably have to like fax something to someone. And he was like, oh, that's good to know, because us Dutch, and this is what Dutch people eventually say, is like, we like to complain about everything. So that's good to know that there's something good here. So that I could bring that little bit to them. But so when you go into the office, the only, normally when you go to see the doctor for anything, they weigh you and take your blood pressure, right? But he didn't do that at first. So he just sit down at his desk, like we're sitting at a desk first thing.
At a desk? Like you're in like an office, not like an exam room?
Oh, yeah. And this is what happened.
Oh, my gosh. This is great. Go on. Uh-huh.
This is how it was when I first moved here and, got a doctor to make sure I had my
Like, is there a nurse that checks you in and like?
Nope.
No, really?
Yeah, you go to the desk.
Wow.
And
I'm finding this shocking. Okay, go on.
You sit in the waiting room, which that's normal, and then the doctor comes and gets you from the waiting room. It's like Cote, and my regular. I've only seen her once, but the doctor that I saw last time, I guess she wasn't there because I saw this dude, and also he's just wearing like,
just like jeans, just hanging out, like no scrubs or anything.
I mean, he's basically like.
Does he have a white coat? I guess that would be the normal. No white coat.
No. He's wearing like the equivalent of just like a Vans t-shirt and then like some jeans and some Vans skate shoes, basically.
Unbelievable.
Right?
This I don't know. I need to go to the doctor next time I'm hamstring. Okay, go on. So
and then so we walk back to his office, and there's a desk, like a real desk with chairs on either side, and he sits down at his desk on his side, and I sit down on my side, and he's like, so. And I'd said on the phone, like, what's going on? And, so I describe it, and he sits there listening. He's like, well, okay. And then, well, first, this is like typical me. He asked me like, how tall I am. And I was like, 5'10", 5'9". I don't know. I don't have my Texas driver's license anymore that had how tall I am on it that I would always use. And he was like, oh, it has your, I'm just going to replay this whole session, I guess. He's like, it has your height on there. I don't think that's on our driver's licenses. So he just pulls out his wallet, and he's looking for his driver's license, and he's got almost like a half Costanza wallet where he's got some paper in there. He just puts it on the desk, and sure enough, he looks on the front and the back of his driver's license, and yes, as I was telling him, it doesn't have your height. So, and then also, I don't know what it is in centimeters, and then you'll love this part. He has me go stand up against, the pillar in the middle of the office and just kind of eyeballs it. And he's like, I don't know, 70, 80 centimeters. I don't even remember what he said, but he just is kind of like, yeah, it's about that. Like, he just wants a rough estimate.
Okay.
And then he asked me how much I weigh, and I'm like, I used to weigh like, I was like, nowadays I weigh between 182 and 185 pounds. And he's like, oh, and not in a bad way. He's like, oh, and then he has me go weigh myself so that he knows kilograms. Right. But the point of that is he wouldn't have done it unless, if I had more confidence in what I was saying, right? Whereas normally in an American system, they always do that, right?
So if you're like, I'm 6'1", 195, and you said it with confidence, you're like, okay.
Yeah. And in metric, I'm sure he would.
Oh, okay. Cool. So convert it to metric. Okay, that would make sense.
Yeah.
So
and then of course, since I thought there might be some sort of, heart chest stuff, he took my my blood pressure and my oxygen level. I mean, that was all fine, but he was doing that.
I assume that's in the same units, or is there some metric equivalent of? I don't know, what is it? Blood pressure. I hope that would be hard. Be like, if they hit you with like it's 1,000, you're like, whoa.
No, I think those are all. I think those are
universal across medical. There's no.
It's not imperial and metric. I think those are different.
Good to know.
Of course, every time people, a doctor, someone gives me a medical readout, I always have to be like, is that good? I mean, they'll be like, they might as well be saying like, oh, it's like Frankfurters over, earwax. That's what your measurement is. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. I don't know what that means. So, but the whole point is he only ran these minor tests because he needed to, right? Not just because I was there. And then and then he had me do some squat thrusts, and he was like, yeah, and everything was fine. He's like, if you're having heart problems when you're doing squat thrusts, that would have really hurt, but everything's fine, so that's not the issue. So who knows what it is? I'm just old, is what his conclusion was.
All right, I just want to summarize. You went in, just to go back, you went in potentially just feeling some heart palpitations, let's call it. And the entire visit consisted of you talking about skateboarding, fumbling through your height and weight, which he then verified and converted to metric, followed by, like, how many thrusts did you do? Did you do like 5? You 10? Like a minute?
I think I did 4 or 5.
So you did 5 squat thrusts, and then did he examine you to see if your heart was up, or did he just say you look fine? Was there any more after did you just watch the thrust and that was it, or was there some measurement of your heart blood pressure after that?
No, not really. No, I mean he took my blood pressure and he did that little oxygen thing that you clip on the finger.
A little okay. So there was at least another measurement of the oxygen.
And okay, to be fair to the laid backness of it, like when I told him that my dad had 2 heart attacks in his 40s, he was like, you should go to get some blood work done. And so the next day I went and, got checked out.
Okay, so he did order up the cholesterol and okay. All right, so that part would be very similar to the United States. You would get the blood work. Okay.
But, I feel like if I was in the States, they would be like, ooh, you got to go get an MRI right away. They just would be on it. Or you would at least have to do some sort of breath test to blow into a tube. I don't know.
VO2 max or something. I don't know. It's kind of interesting hearing it. It's in some ways, it's it seems better, but it also seems I don't know where I come down on it. It does seem because I think in some ways, I'm going to translate a little bit what he said. I think he just sort of played a little bit. And I think a lot of doctors do this. They just kind of help you a little bit with psychology. You're just feeling anxious, or your wife in this case feeling anxious. So that part of it is just them kind of just being the professional person that can say, you're fine. It's just some anxiety, right? I mean, that's another way of saying that.
Right.
Which is actually a very helpful thing. Sometimes just someone that has a credential telling you you're just having some anxiety about this issue, it's fine, is actually a great way to relieve the anxiety. So I don't mean to trivialize that.
For sure.
But it is it's fun. In the US, it does seem like at a minimum you would have seen someone would have checked you in. You would have presented an insurance card, right, to the office staff. Sat down. You would have certainly seen a nurse. The nurse would have taken a bunch of vitals, written all this down, put you in the little room. You would have waited. And then the doctor, I guess, he probably would have come in. A doctor, he or she probably would have done something similar. I don't know about the thrust, though. It seems like that does feel I don't know.
I think it was. I've never
asked for that.
Mm-hmm. It could be one of those things. When you call tech support, they're like, instead of asking you if you rebooted it, they're like, what I need you to do is unplug it and blow the dust out of it. It could just be some sort of placebo thing. But his logic made sense, right? He's like, your heart will go I think he said 50 times that doesn't make sense. But your heart is going to work a lot more than if you're just sitting there. So this will have a huge effect.
Okay, so if you were having some type of, is that what you put some stress on the heart?
And yeah. But it was weird. Like that morning, I had like reached up to like get a can of Pringles, and it just like my total like arm and side and armpit and chest like really hurt doing that. And I hadn't been, as I told him, I hadn't been digging holes or like anything that you would expect to feel sore with. Anyhow, so that was all cool. I still need to figure out getting the test results back. I'm not sure. Like when I went to the lab, it was great. There was no line. I just like stood there and like I stood there because there were the two lab techs talking with each other. But then when they were done, they're like, "Oh yeah, come in." And then it must have taken like 5 minutes total to like draw 3 vials of blood. And then I was like, "Wow, that was fast." And then that was it. And then I was like, "This is more like great." Like laid backness. I was like, so for the results, when do I get those? Do they call them? And she was like, oh no, you called to get them. And I was like, okay, so when do I call? And she said literally next week. And I was like, knowing the laid back of stuff, in my head I was like on Tuesday or Friday, but I knew that there was no answer. It was literally just, yeah, call next week sometime. It's very exciting. However, okay. So this is the second thing that I really want. This is the more pressing issue. Is like I said, my jaw was hurting as well over on the what side is that? The right side, and that has persisted. And in fact, today it's gotten worse. And I was thinking, maybe I have a cavity, and this is what like I actually have. I have a couple of fillings, so I did have some cavities, but it was one of those cavities where like I was at my dentist check, and he's like, "Oh, we should fill these in," and I was like, "Oh, I had no idea. Like I've never felt the pain of a cavity, right? So I don't really know what it feels like. However, like it's hard to tell because it's kind of like all of my jaw, but I've gone in to my mouth with my fingers, and I've like wiggled all of my teeth on that side, and nothing hurts, right? But it's still like to eat something is a little sore to masticate on that side. And so not having like lived through a painful cavity episode, what I want to know is like, can I, like if I do have a cavity, I feel like if I go in and pinch my gums and like pull on my teeth, kind of like with doing the squat thrust, there should be some like very painful event that I'm causing if I have a cavity.
No. That's not how it works. That's definitely not. Okay. So just to reiterate, I mean, we're not a show that gives out medical advice. So, for all the listeners that don't follow us for stock picks or medical advice. But I would just say if someone that's had many cavities, no, you're not necessarily going to feel any pain by just putting your finger in. Like what you should do is just go in, have a dental exam, like usually a cleaning, right? Have them take x-rays and then they can see if the decay, because oftentimes the decay will be inside the tooth and it'll be and it won't be outwardly noticeable necessarily. And if it gets to the root, right, that's what a cavity is essentially. The decay, it starts to show some of the roots. So that's when you're kind of biting on something and like you're like it kind of comes and goes. Maybe you feel like a little bit of pain, maybe no pain, or just like.
And does it cause like soreness in your entire jaw?
I don't know. Soreness is that seems a little unusual. That can maybe be like, now we're really talking about being way off our area here. Like maybe that's a gum thing, or maybe, but not. Regardless, I guess let's just leave it at this. Like you should go get your teeth cleaned. I don't know how to do it in Amsterdam, of course, but like here, like once a year, get your teeth. Once a year, you'll usually have x-rays taken. That's all you need to do is like have them take a set of x-rays.
Okay.
Have the dentist look at it, and they can tell you if, because the other thing is like you may be having some type of like root canal, root issue or something that could be causing it. So that would be my advice on that one.
Okay, yeah, I should probably. I mean, they take dentistry pretty serious around here.
I don't know. After hearing your description of let's call me your general practitioner, it could be pretty laid back. Maybe the dentist will just like, hey, tell me. Maybe he'll just sit down and he'll just be like, tell me about your teeth. I don't know, like that,
So you think you have a cavity? Well, why don't you stand up and do a few squats?
All right, that's the perfect end. That's the perfect end of that, the squats. So, all right, well, I hope. Well, I mean, most importantly, I'm glad you're in good health. Sounds like you've.
Yeah. See, it's like it like hurts right in the middle here. Does that mean I have a cavity? Is that?
I don't know. I mean, that's. That could be
I feel like it's my mandible muscle or whatever is like sore. Like, oh man, it's hard to tell. Let's see. If I press down, basically, I don't want to go to the dentist. That's
I totally get though. I mean, listen, I'm with you on like not wanting to go to the doctor, but there's probably not going to be a good answer for you on just by because you're like, I mean, I feel much the same. It's like, what can I diagnose on myself? Do I really need to go to a doctor? But then you start if you search for anything on the internet, it's like you're just 2 clicks away from like a rare disease that's killing you, right? And you're like, whoa. This feels like a lot for like for like I had a little pain in my tooth and now I'm like in the obscure disease I've never heard of. So it's like I almost think it's like that's the worst thing to do is to Google any type of like this hurts, right? It's like you're gonna get so many answers. So
and I've also considered as suggested here the teeth clenching stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common, right? A lot of times people.
I mean, I've never had that, but I am getting older. As the doctor says.
Although it does sound like, when's the last time you've been to a dentist?
Oh boy.
Maybe you shouldn't answer that question. You know what? Just don't answer that question because I think that's like some HIPAA information. Just your response tells me that may be the problem.
Yeah, I haven't been to a dentist.
Sure. So
yeah, I would really, man. I would like to be the kind of person where like next time I go to a dentist, I can be like, look, don't give me a lecture. I know you just like I'm here for some. Just do the work. I don't need a lecture. Please.
I actually had this. I was there was a period of my life I didn't go to the dentist when I was much younger. And I actually did have like a cathartic dental consultation where I just like went. I finally went because I was having some pain, kind of like different, but similar to like, like low level pain. And I went in and they were just like, it's clear the dentist is very used to seeing this because they were like unfazed. They're just like, okay, well, it looks like, like I told him, and be like, oh, it looks like you haven't been in a while. No problem. Let's get all these teeth clean. Let's put together a plan. Because it was almost like a IT. It was almost like an IT project, right? It was like, no problem. We've took it over. Here's what we think we should do immediately, and here's the order we should do it in, and like, go, let's get it all cleaned up. Oh, and it took like a year. Like I had to go. I had so many different appointments to do, but they were very, it's like, it's their business. They're just very chill about it. There's no lecture. It was just like, hey, yeah,
we'll get you. That's good.
Like I think the kids get lectured. I think that's where you're probably reminding like. Because I see this a lot at my son's dentist. There is like, you need to brush more. You need to do, there's constant repetition. So you feel like as an adult, you're going to get the same thing. And it's like, no, they're not going to do that. They're just like, use the Sonicare, come see us twice. Yeah, you got some problems here. We can take care of it. The more that you brush, that'll be helpful. If not, just come back. We'll do whatever we need to do. That's been my general impression.
Do some squats.
Do some squats. All right. Well, everybody go see our friends at Strong DM. Tell them your friends at Software Defined Talk sent you. They can help you out with all your access management. So we're ready. We're ready to go. All right, Coach A, whenever you're ready.
Right, no more ads, right?
That's it. We can go to the end.
All right. Well, I've every now and then I've been recording with our old friend Charles Lull, the Drunker and Retired Rebirth there, and we just recorded one this week that I released. If you go to drunkerandretired.fireside.fm, you can download it. But I finally got around to asking, and this is what I like to do with this podcast. I haven't programmed since like 2005 or 6, and despite having covered this stuff, there's a lot of like things that I don't really like know, and I only know abstractly. So I finally like got an interesting explanation, something that I didn't even realize I was asking, about basically how like package management and repos and all that stuff worked. And just to lay the baseline is basically like, back when I programmed, you remember back then when I was there programming, Brandon, you were there. Like if you wanted to use some software, a framework, you would get in Java, you would download a jar file and you would use that. That was basically the state of the art. I mean, there was some early stuff of like automatically downloading the stuff, but essentially like you would download the file and put it in the class path and you would use it and set up your stuff. And so I was talking about that with him and he was like, oh yeah, no one does that anymore. It's the
dependencies, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's all, you have all these registries or repos that you use and the stuff just gets pulled down from that automatically because you say that you use it. And then I've learned, I forget, you might know where like this idea comes from some, business book, how to analyze things. But I've learned to ask the following type of question in this situation to be like, that was really interesting. I didn't even realize that. So do programmers even realize that that's a thing Like, do they even think about that? And he's like, no one thinks about that. That's just the way it is. And, that kind of opened up my mind to all the discussion that people have about like, registries. Like I've always wondered why like JFrog is such a huge company, but it's because like you need all these registries and that's the way that you just do software instead of just downloading it and using it. Then of course, I'm sounding like kind of a fool here for saying this, but it's always fun to learn something. But that's of course, if you're like at a big organization, you want to set up ideally all your own registries to control software that gets distributed there. And of course, I bet that only works like 20 to 30% of the time. And then you're always chasing after developers who have been just getting their stuff off of the internet here. And I was reminded of that, because you always have your what are the kids calling it now? Supply chains. You've got your supply chain. Uh-huh. Yeah, that you're. I mean, and if you want to be really choice, your secure software supply chain.
Of course, yes.
That would be the SSC, right?
Yeah.
The 3CS is what we need to start calling them.
So yeah. Triple SC.
Yeah. One day I want someone to explain to me why they're always like squaring and square rooting stuff in math. Like it seems like a lot of work that should be avoided. But anyways, there's a reminder of this that I think one of the people who provides some of the core JavaScript stuff just decided to just like totally fuck them up that people rely on. Which I haven't read in depth in that, but it does seem like I feel like. This, I don't know what the intentions were, but this is some sort of great, maybe unintentional, just performative art to just remind people about how everything works. And it also seems like, I feel like everything, maybe it's because I work at a vendor who wants to sell you the S-cubed C stuff.
Right.
And every vendor wants to sell you that now, but like maybe people are coming around to this idea that you should just like not download stuff, willy-nilly automatically and really have kind of like a more static idea of the code that you have there. But at least it doesn't seem to have brought down the internet.
Well, I mean, this is kind of back to, I think, our ongoing discussion. So I think what you're referring to is this week where, I guess somebody is NPM corruption. They changed the faker.js, which I think creates a bunch of fake data for demos, and then colors.js. It looks like the original author, changed it to do some bad things. And I think it was a little unclear if it was a political statement or maybe the person was having a mental health crisis. Like, that wasn't clear to me what was going on there. But regardless, they did it. And then that, of course, to your point, is every time someone, basically uses NPM in the package manager, it pulls down the latest version. So, I mean, it does kind of come back to this kind of ongoing question. Like, of course, there are ways you could avoid this, right? To your point about create your own repositories, basically only put in packages that you believe or that you vetted for your own security requirements, and then just pull it from there. But I think that, like everything, it comes back to like that's a lot of work. Right. And then I think if Matt Raber here he would say something like, you can also specify the specific version. So you can not get the latest, always go back and get like this specific version. So that would be another way. But again, more work. So it is kind of back to this open question around, well, everyone can do that work, right? And kind of like do the gatekeeping themselves to protect themselves. Or when there's a problem like this, GitHub just steps in, suspends the account. They they fix the changes, and it's just like everyone either does the rollback version or gets the new version, and it's fixed. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like we talk about like the security violations all the time. It's like, well, is it better to just live with it, or is it better to try to take tons of steps to prevent it, even though that's going to take you a lot of time and effort? So I don't, it'd be interesting to see what the responses are to this. But of course, like as Matt Ray was saying in his, what company would you start if you're starting a company today? You would start a secure pipeline, software pipeline company, because this comes up all the time. So I don't know, but it's like a lot of these things. It's like, I don't know, we're just going to wait a couple of weeks. This is going to go away. And I don't know if people really are going to really take a lot of action. And I'm not sure they should take a ton of action. It's more like, it happens. This is kind of a unique situation. Now, if someone does it every day, if everyone starts corrupting all of the files all the time, then you will have to do it.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea that like someone like GitHub should take the what's the word, the prerogative, the initiative to solve a problem like that. Like, it's an interesting. What would we call that in real life? Would that be called like a moral position? Like, is it to essentially be like, this is a widely used thing, and there's something wrong with it that we can fix, even though we're not like the owners of it, right? And so therefore, we will take action to fix this thing, and and because it perhaps implies a bunch of like sticky stuff. Like, at some point, they also have to make a call of like other stuff that they don't go out there and fix. So then you've got to come up with a program for it, and like it becomes like a whole thing. You got to
it becomes like a moral hazard question. Is like, well, where do you intervene, right? And where so like a case like this, it seems like this was breaking lots of applications. It was clearly the broader community was frustrated, even causing damage. So it seems pretty easy case.
I guess that's the policies. If it's breaking things, then if it's breaking things not because like it's been end of life or something, then maybe there's probably a good reason to stand in and roll back things and so that all the automatic updates don't get screwed up. Now, also, like, do you? Regardless of what's happening here, I probably should have done the background reading. But like, do you think it would be possible to make a political statement by breaking a widely used piece of code? I guess the statement you would be making is you would call attention to it and then make the statement, right? Like the way in which you broke code, you'd probably have to be pretty clever to have just the way that things were broken be some sort of like a statement that you wanted to make.
Yeah, well, in this case, the person did something. It's basically something about liberty, and I mean, they were basically posting something. I guess that would, it's like something like, let's say, what really happened with Aaron Swartz. Like, so I don't know, it kind of had this conspiracy kind of thing going. So it did. I mean, it did result, I guess, in like calling attention to this.
I guess if you were doing like some sort of JavaScript or some sort of front end library, you could just like put some text.
You could show stuff, right? So you could definitely, and I think that's where people noticed, right? It's like, oh, wait a minute, like it's not just the applications are breaking. It's like we're seeing all this weird stuff. Like, what's going on there? So
it'd be like in sneakers, like no more secrets or too many secrets just shows up everywhere.
It does kind of have that feel to it
because they've broken the encryption on the mainframe.
That's right. It's always the mainframe. It's always encryption on the mainframe. So
yeah. So yeah, that'll be a lot of the prediction pieces have been coming out, and I think that a lot of people talk about your S3C stuff. People are interested in that, so we'll see if that rolls on. I mean, I think to your point also, like, no, everyone's forgotten about Log4j problems, right? That was just last week. I don't know if that.
Well, they do kind of come and go, but I do think it is kind of I guess it's kind of this ongoing discussion in the broader industry just around like gatekeepers versus decentralization and whatever. And it's like, and there is always this, I don't know. I mean, it does feel like you walk up these chains, like, so like take this example. It's like open source. Anyone can edit the code. This person owns the code. They may change it. It is their library. But like, there are times at these moments where like having a gatekeeper, like someone like GitHub, who can just step in, right? I mean, even though it's sort of not what, sometimes we don't want that. Like, we don't want someone telling us what software you can put, what packages can put on GitHub. But like in this case, it's convenient, right? And it reminds me a little bit of the SolarWinds issues back with Microsoft, where they finally figured out like which IP address and like where it was all going, and they just took over that IP and that URL. Like, they just stepped in, right? And they were just like, and I guess through the government agencies. But like, it's nice, right? It's like there are times where it's like, oh, this is great. These people can just like step in and correct this problem, which is, I think a lot of times people are like telling you why that's bad, right? We hear a lot about like, oh, gatekeepers, it's centralization, it's wrong. And there's lots of reasons for that. But at the same time, there are moments like this where it's like, it's actually pretty convenient. It's almost like, you lost your password, like legitimately, oh, I can change it for you. Like, there's someone that can help you versus like, sorry, there's nothing we can do. It's like, so I think it's just interesting that like these issues kind of come up over and over again.
So speaking of centralized stuff, I think there's further wedging the cracks of this whole Web3 crypto thing. I think every week or so, some tech nerd comes in and like tries to figure out exactly what's going on there. I was listening to the Dithering podcast, which I recommend. Maybe for the past few episodes they've been a little like all over the place, but like one of them had a fun theory that like a lot of interesting articles have come out in the past few weeks because there are a bunch of like nerds who had a lot of vacation time, and they were like, now that I got some time off, I'm going to try to figure out what this Web3 thing is.
Crypto over Christmas, crypto projects over the Christmas break. Yeah,
and so there've been people like actually writing some few things, some apps here and testing it out, and I think it seems like tell me if this is the impression. It seems like the current state of the art of what's going on here, from just like a less, not so much just like a bald, crass, this is a bunch of BS level, is like, well, it's inherently centralized because there's only like a few services that you use to access everything. Like it doesn't actually work to do things in a decentralized way, which, and then I think one of the more recent posts was also great, where it was like, well, you still need DNS and a server that you're going to run somewhere. So you already need all of the stuff that you're trying to decentralize, or you need all your centralized stuff anyways. So you're just building it on top of there. And I still don't, now as I read this more and more, I still haven't figured out like what the magic of the stuff is that makes it different. So it's what is this? We got January 13th, Brandon. I'm still skeptical. I haven't.
Nothing's changed.
So yeah, I think so far the year hasn't evolved.
I was gonna say, I guess it's I'm gonna do my best. It's Moxie, Marlin Spike? Marlin, I think that's how you say his name. So he's well-known cryptographer, wrote Signal, and he wrote a pretty long piece on it. And I think he's the one that essentially pointed out, and he maybe even generalizing his points even more, was just sort of like the client, like your phone or your web browser, still is going to, basically go to a website to then interact with this whole system, right? And that website, even though behind the scenes it's all decentralized and it's doing all this blockchain stuff, that website can basically step in and do stuff, right? And basically make corrections. And I think his point. Go ahead.
His good original content is, I'm actually going to write some applications
to prove this out, right?
Yeah, and just see what it's like. And I think I still don't understand all these things, but he made some kind of NFT that originally was one thing, and then he decided to change it to the poop emoji, and then he ran this through OpenSea. Was his like broker or something? I don't know what they say, but
NFT broker, right?
And then kind of to our GitHub gatekeeper thing. If I remember, I think he said that once he changed it to the poop thing, someone at OpenSea or something decided that this was like corrupt, and so they just turned it off. And he didn't quite say it this like he had a very good programmer nerd tone throughout it, very very clinical. But I think essentially what he was saying is like, so that whole decentralized thing where some authority can't just control your digital asset doesn't seem to be real.
Yeah, no, totally. It totally. I do think, but what I thought was more insightful this week were two other posts kind of closely related that I read for this. One was from Klein and Perkins, and they were doing this partner was essentially doing kind of their predictions of the year and like what's going on. And I thought this passage was really interesting, right? It says, I'll quote from it for a second here. It says, quote, Web3 software needs to be instrumented with observability for debugging and performance monitoring. Web3 developers will demand tools that improve their productivity. Blockchains will require reliable DNS resolution as well as global performance and transaction analytics. And so it goes on and on, right? And what he's basically outlining in his paragraph is like, he does not say it this way. So this is my commentary. So he's basically saying, this is really exciting because all of the enterprise software companies that I funded before have to be rebuilt, right? And provide the same functionality to this new Web3 phenomenon. And I thought that was just, to me, it's just sort of like, why is a venture capitalist excited about Web3? I think that answer, like his answer is implicit, is like, this is great because I get to fund all the same problems again. Like we kind of joke all the time, Cote, that monitoring gets rewritten year after year. And like this would be another, right now somebody is writing the observability Web3 monitoring software stack, and they're trying to become the next whatever, Datadog or whoever the biggest one is. And it's like, and then I think it's just like acknowledging that incentive is like really important to understand. It's like, okay, the venture capital community wants to do this. They want to fund things they've seen before. That's exciting to them. But if there isn't like a new problem being solved, that may not be exciting to the end users, which I don't know.
That's right.
Maybe that's obvious, but like I thought it was really, to me, it really jumped off the page. This, along with the kind of like the reason it may not work in the future, is like kind of two pieces of the puzzle.
Well, I'm imagining that in the, I don't know what financial calendar they're on, but I'm imagining in this current year's CTO trend report inside BMC. I hope that the BMC CTO trend report has been contemplating, how they're going to monitor and manage blockchain-based things, and how there's a lot of potential there. And then they'll probably just go back to doing some batch management stuff, because that's right. To your point, like, people need that, and it's more realistic, and it'll be hard to find.
But I think it's a good answer. Just like, we see a lot of Andreessen Horowitz or A16Z. Like, okay, that explains it. Like, they are excited about funding all of these startups, and I mean, I don't mean it in a bad way. It's like, okay, but like, it's just sort of like know where the incentives are. And the other one that I think is really interesting is the great Matt Levine newsletter, which is just, I mean, how many times have I recommended it? But he goes on to say, like, he's talking about the crypto boom. Now he's just talking about from the financial side, right? And it's like, I'll quote from his newsletter this week. It says, the crypto boom is a wild gold rush for money, but it's also important, says, is intellectual gold rush. If, like Citadel Systems, you have spent the last few decades building the intellectual and technological apparatus to trade financial assets quickly and efficiently across multiple venues in a complex global environment, getting handed a bunch of brand new assets and venues and environments has to be fun and exciting, right? And I think that was just another kind of way to look at this. It's like, wow, like if you are great at trading financial instruments and you get new financial instruments where there isn't like a ton of competition, right? Like, think about all stocks and bonds, and there's tons of competition, but there's not that much competition in crypto. Like, it is super exciting. So that's why you think about all the financial banks and all the various, whatever you want to call them, stocks and things that you can trade this way. Like, that group of people is going to be really, really excited. So again, like, he's kind of pointing out the same thing. Is like, yeah, financial institutions want to trade crypto because it's new to them. And again, there may not be an underlying value to a consumer, but when you kind of pair these two up, venture capitalists want to like fund the same kinds of companies for the enterprise. Financial markets want to build new financial products for you. And it's like, yeah, of course, these two groups are going to make a lot of noise about this because it's extremely exciting for them.
This raises a good point that pulls together a lot of stuff from my, left-leaning like 90s upbringing. And first is, what I think I laid out as the, we got too many types of screws problem, right? Which is just like, it's just capitalism gone amok. Like, we don't need this many types of screws. Stop innovating types of screws. And then equally, like, every time I dip a little bit, and sometimes your newsletter friend here goes over this, every time I dip a little bit into all the types of financial instruments out there, and he always does a good job of explaining these, I don't even know what, derivatives and contracts and SPACs and things. Like, usually by the end of reading that, I always think, like, I don't understand what the need for this is, right? Like, you've just come up with all these weird things just to have something to invest in. And I think that's the key there, right? Like, whether if you're dealing in a purely finance, kind of just pure, I want to make money with money, like the product that you're creating is money instead of a product, then all you really want to do is encourage money moving as much as possible. The more that money moves around, the more money you're going to make. Like, that's kind of all that you can focus on. And so, of course, like, if you're a venture funded person, there's some new field that needs to be filled out. That's a bunch of money moving around. You want to get involved in it, which is wonderful. And then now, so you've got this motivation from financial people to like move money around. And then you marry this up technologically with the desire for nerds to constantly be working on new things and reworking on stuff. And it's like a perfect storm. You can identify the nerds are just like, well, the internet sure was cool, but now let's completely rewrite it. And people will say like, but what problem are you solving? And they're like, the problem we're solving is my boredom. And like, and then so it's a great combination if you actually tie together finance with nerds wanting to rewrite stuff over and over again. now you've got this. It's fantastic because basically you have the nerds like inventing kind of like a false need for something that it immediately needs not only like financial instruments around it, but just new monitoring and logging systems.
Right, and I think that's kind of like I think what you kind of described there, sort of like this is what leads to the massive speculation, right? These two things happening simultaneously. Like you have tons of financial products potentially creating, people that want to speculate on them, followed by companies that want to build solutions to support them, which is yet another form of speculating on like what the future will want, all while the actual demand and need for this is not proven out, right? Typically, I think what we'd like to see is something new emerges and it starts to get use and it has some type of consumer surplus that we're all using. So you just pick the internet, right? It's just like, yeah, everyone's building a website. Turns out these websites are really useful for whatever reason. And then people say, look, well, we should fund more people to build websites. We should fund tools to build websites. But that's following the demand created, right? Because it's very clear why a company building a website, adds value to the company. And I think in this case, it's like everything is being front run, right? Like nobody can decide like in this case, the consumer surplus being created. And I think that's why it leads to all of this kind of like back and forth, right? Like some people just, hey, it's going to happen. And it could. I mean, to be fair, something could emerge. Like, I don't know what, right? But it is something could emerge out of this. I just think, I think we can say at this very moment, it's mostly speculation. There isn't, even though Chris Dixon will tell us we're all wrong, and then he'll quote Gandhi, but not really the Gandhi, because we talked about that. That wasn't a quote from Gandhi, but like he'll say that, and it's like, well, I still don't think it applies, right? It still comes back to, Chris, I just don't see the actual consumer surplus. Doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means we don't see it today. And I think he would tell me I'm wrong. You're missing it, and I'd be like, I'm watching. I'm not missing it. I'm watching for it.
I think you put it well. This is a market that is based on the idea that something might happen. That's like we might come up with a use for this that makes sense versus just like having a centralized database somewhere. And I mean, I think the last thing on that topic is finally someone made the point that I hadn't really like in reading through this stuff, I hadn't really thought about that much, but someone made the point that the whole framing of Web 2.0 being Facebook was not really what Web 2.0 was. It was Web 2.0 was more about open systems and decentralized things, and it was the WordPress guy Matt Mullenweg who he dug up an old slide from the 2000s that listed all the old systems. Your Flickrs. I think Technorati might have even been on there if you remember them.
Yeah, that's old school for sure.
Yeah, it is indeed that the idea of Web 1 and Web 2 and Web 3 is a little like not accurate, or at least the first two there of how people frame it. And it does seem like a lot of the stuff is just like it's basically anti-Facebook. Maybe that should be the way that we file away Web 3 stuff, is people are trying to just take away the centralized hold that Facebook has on things. But I don't know. To your point, something might happen. There might be a product that emerges here. So I'm sure we'll check in next week for the Web3 files and see what's happening there. That'll be good stuff. Now, also in that, I think it was in the Kleiner Perkins write up. This was like the annual what's going on there. I think was there's a suggestion that maybe the big web scalers, they'll sort of more focus on the actual primitives, the atomic units, instead of building out the higher level abstraction layers that are out there, and so that they can be reused across the multi-cloud world, I guess, and narrow down to that. Now, what do you think of that idea there, Brandon? Are they going to?
I liked it. I thought
this was.
I did. I thought this whole post was interesting. So this was the same person that read it, because I think, this insight is kind of interesting. Is like maybe, and if you think about it for a second, is like, hey, just owning the primitives, which is mostly like compute, storage, networking, maybe we'll throw databases in there and say, hyperscalers ultimately may decide, or it may become apparent that just managing those businesses are both profitable enough and big enough to sustain, the growth, right, that they want to see out of it. And so his point is that the other things on top of it, and he calls it serverless infrastructure solutions, which I thought was a little bit weird because I think of serverless as something different. But I think what he's really just saying is like, hey, someone like Snowflake, leave all the data analytics to Snowflake, right? Leave these more complicated infrastructure solutions that sit on top of the primitives to other providers. And that all over time, that may make more sense, right? Because I think one of the things that all of the hyperscalers are criticized for is sometimes people feel like their solutions aren't necessarily as complete as other people's. And so the thought is that, hey, instead of competing with all of these, just use them as a platform to actually build out new serverless infrastructure solutions. So I thought it was an interesting idea. And I do think, this point about valuations makes sense, right? It's like, yeah, if, even Amazon or Microsoft or Google, as big as they are, they can't do everything. So maybe you do end up with them focusing on the primitives and then mostly partnering with like the other large solutions like the Snowflakes and other things to provide the infrastructure. So I don't know. I mean, I think today, if you went into Amazon or Microsoft or Google, they'd probably say, no, we want to own it all. But over time, maybe it does make more sense. And I think you could look at another example would be like Netflix versus Amazon Video. It's like Netflix still seems like it's a superior video solution. Amazon Prime Video doesn't seem like they're going to displace them anytime soon. And maybe that's okay, right? Maybe that's a good way for everyone to make money. So maybe that'll appear in enterprise software going forward.
Yeah, just Amazon design stuff just continues to be super goofy and weird. Like, just like, I don't know, maybe that they've got a thing there where like I feel like you always know when you're using some Amazon software because there are some clunkiness in their UI that makes it always apparent. I was just on that topic. I was just thinking like, I don't know, maybe we should like cancel our Netflix account because we just watch the Disney Plus stuff all the time.
Right.
Like,
but maybe that's like, even a better example. It's like Disney Plus, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they're built on, right? But it's like whether it's Amazon, right? It's like, hey, it's just like they're like Amazon's never going to have Marvel and Star Wars. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, maybe it is just better for them to sit on top of it. And I think, somebody in the chat here is pointing out, it's like, well, over time, like, the value is in these other things, the higher business value stuff. And I think that's what this specific post is kind of calling into question is like, hey, over time, because he even kind of says that, like, that, if you will, this idea of this co-opetition is like collectively everyone can make more money by kind of doing this together. And I think if you were Amazon, and I know this is not really their culture, right? Is like, why not let some of these other large serverless infrastructure solutions get big enough and prove it out. And then just, if you really want to own it, just buy them, right? Like just buy Snowflake, buy Elastic, rather than offering a competing service that doesn't provide all the functionality. And I think that's going to be the tension going forward. It's like, okay, and I think I feel like we see more of it lately where people feel like the Amazon service that was launched with the 2 Pizza team or whatever doesn't quite offer all the functionality, and there's frustration, right? So it's like, do they continue to do that? Will Amazon continue to do that and just say, hey, we've given you enough? Or is there some point where it's like, hey, if we really want to own it, let's just buy that, right? Let's buy that and integrate it. That's not really an Amazon thing, but that would be, back in the day, that would be how IBM or Oracle would have built out their enterprise business. Just buy up these smaller companies, integrate them, and keep it flowing. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah. The three big cloud providers, I could imagine that they have a different approach to that, like higher than the infrastructure, higher value, like integrated stuff, right? Like from Microsoft, like you would expect the more classical approach that they've always had, which is like, well, what we ultimately want to provide is like, I mean, metaphorically, like a set of DVDs that you install it and you can develop and run software. Like and you can also like manage it. Like we have all the way from the operating system to the programming language to the management tools. We have everything. Like it all comes from us. And like, I could see that as they build out all their Azure stuff. I mean, maybe it already is like this, but it would be comprehensive and well integrated together, right? And then with Amazon, it seems like they're more driven of like, well, wasn't the joke that like that their answer of why they have so many services is that because people ask for them? And so basically, instead of imagining like the more Microsoft or the more classic approach where you imagine what the market would need to achieve the outcomes that it wants. Instead, the Amazon thing is like, what do you want? They're like the short order cooks of the cloud. Just like whatever someone wants to order, they'll build it up. Which means you get a whole bunch of different things that aren't out of the box integrated with each other. I don't know. I mean, that's why you have. It's actually not why. It's for a completely different reason. But that's why something that's useful, like everything has to be done through an API, becomes useful, because you kind of default to like, you should build in openness and integration from as a possibility, not something that just, you don't actually do the integration work. You just have APIs so that it would be possible. And then like with Google, I don't know what they would do. Like they're I don't know how I would think about their approach for stuff. But they must have one. But it related. There was I forget the person's name, but there was a guy who worked at Amazon for 10 months doing design stuff, and he had a nice detailed post of like how things ran inside, as far as not really technologically. Do people say technologically? That sounds like such a science fiction term. But more of the process. And I know that we're always very interested, Brandon, to match what people say on the outside of how Amazon works with how they actually work. And I think once again, we're getting a lot every time that we hear some take on Amazon. I think there's two core things I always take away from that are like, they actually do this. And that is, they really live by the, I think they're up to like 300 principles now, last I checked. But they really live by whatever those principles are.
Right.
That seems to be a big deal. Now, I feel like he said that the recruiter told him to look up and learn the principles. And I don't know, maybe this is just the old school student in me, but I feel like that's kind of cheating. Like, you shouldn't be prompted. They shouldn't tell you how to take the test. Something's wrong there. But I mean, I joke. It's probably a good idea to look that stuff up, but that seems to be real. And then the old PR fact thing, the kind of 6-page memo thing, that seems to be real in all accounts of how things happen. And then everything else that I always read about when people talk about how Amazon always works is, it's not like shocking. It's always just like, oh, I didn't realize that. That's interesting. Like there's something. Like one of the things he raises is that, he doesn't quite say it this way, and I don't know if this is just contemporaneous or whatever. Boy, my son's in the kitchen. He's gotten in the habit of like the midnight snack, and I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know what's up with that. But that basically there's a lot of churn in teams. And so that means that everything is kind of like, you don't have the long-term stability, for when it comes to like, he was saying there's often a large backlog of projects to work on, and people just come and go from teams and things like that, which seems like, I don't know if that's intentional or not, but that doesn't seem helpful to allow or encourage that kind of thing. But maybe it's unavoidable nowadays. But it's always nice to have a little.
Well, I thought the best line of this, his right up here, and I guess this is sort of like old man yells at cloud or whatever. But I just thought it was funny because he writes it as, quote, "The most surprising thing I encountered when joining was how manual most processes are. It blew my mind how many business critical processes were managed with Excel spreadsheets being shared via email chains. It is incredible how flexible and effective Excel is for such a wide variety of use cases." It's just like, you can just see this person like having the awakening. It's like, yep, that's how it works everywhere. Doesn't matter where you go. It's basically Excel. I don't care how many business objects or business intelligence tools you have. At the end of the day, it's email and Excel files being passed around, and you can go anywhere. So I thought that was, to me, it was just funny because like everyone encounters this on their own. It's almost like, oh, I realized everyone's just a normal person like me, and they're just doing kind of the same stuff. And I don't know. I just found some I don't know what you want to call it, some peace in seeing someone rediscover
That's
this.
Right.
For themselves.
Validation.
I remember when I thought everyone figured it out, and I'd go to the company and I'd have nothing but like beautiful databases and all the data. I could just query anything I wanted and get a list of the customers using my product and see how they're doing it and looking where they're clicking. And it's just perfect. And it's like, no, that doesn't exist anywhere. It doesn't. And it's email and spreadsheets. So I'm glad he found that out, just like the rest of us.
I think that passage, it's really the last sentence. Oh, I don't want any, but thank you. That it's really the last sentence that changes completely the nature of what's going on there. You read this and you think it's going to be the complaining about using Excel, but then you see that it's more of an epiphany of like, wow, this is a great tool. We should I should be considering this more for usage rather than the.
It's like the first time someone shows somebody like pivot tables in Excel, you're like, whoa, I didn't know I did this, and you're like, oh, this is just the beginning. So, this is just the beginning of what you can do. So
yeah,
it reminds there. Now listen, I was there the same. I say that only as someone who's walked the path, not someone that means it in any way me. I was like, yeah, absolutely. I went through that whole path myself.
Yeah. We have a team spreadsheet that tracks all of our. That's basically we enter all of our calendar stuff into it, like major events, not like day by day calendar stuff. And like, I don't think about it very often, but sometimes I think like, why are we using a spreadsheet for this? Like, it's just like, why don't we just have our calendar? But like it just is like, it's perfect. You just want to like be able to go to each person and just quickly scroll down and like see what's going on there. And it's so much better than if we all like were following each other's calendars or something ridiculous like that. Anyhow, I had some other point to make, Brandon, but I've forgotten it. Too much popcorn and distraction from my son there. He likes, when he's getting his snacks, he likes to have bananas, but he likes to cut banana slices. And I don't know if this is intentional or it's just fun, but he leaves the skin on so that you can kind of like unpeel. You have to unpeel the banana skin from it to get the little. I think he's giving me some commentary there. We got a guest commentary in this episode, but anyhow, oh, I know what it was. Like that also reminded me. So like I was trying to figure out what this backstage thing is that Spotify put out, right? And so I like spent a lot of time watching some videos, and they start off by explaining why you need Backstage. Basically, they go through like if you're doing CMDB or asset database as a spreadsheet, it's going to become a problem at some point, right? Where you have to you're trying to diagnose some problem, and then you've got to like ask Alex for the spreadsheet that tracks all your assets, and that just gets to be a little too unwieldy. And so instead, you can build your asset database that's kept up better. You can automate that, and it'll work out better. And it's funny, as I was watching through their presentations of the cycle, they would get to the point where you can finally, like, each project has a runtime updating of what the assets are, and it's great. It's like what you were kind of describing, where like if you are a really curious and interested developer, you have like one page in the plugin they have for Backstage that you go to that will list like all of the kind of like assets, the current version, who the owner of a thing is, like all the relevant information for your project. But then it will also list like the status of your application running in production, and for Spotify, whatever the music related thing is. And then it'll list all the dependencies that it has and like, all that kind of stuff in one place finally. And they were going through it, and I was just, as an aside, I was like, man, I hope that there's a way to just export a spreadsheet so that you can basically just scroll through like the 500 things that are there instead of having to visit each individual page.
Yep. Like export data, always a must-have on every. Doesn't matter what you're building. Export data is one of the features you must have. So
I want to suggest a new paradigm for thinking about we shouldn't be using the spreadsheet. Is that like you might not should use a spreadsheet as the only primary tracking mechanism, but you should always realize that a spreadsheet is probably the primary UI for dealing with your system. Like it's so you got to figure out like, how do I are you just gonna eat everything? I don't want that. You're making your lunch. Oh, that's nice. Okay, well, great. I don't want one, but thank you. But you got to realize that like people are going to want to manipulate a spreadsheet. So just like we should know that eventually we're going to integrate with Active Directory, let's just do a spreadsheet right out of the gate, right? And make sure that we have that as an interface for working with things, even if we're trying to eliminate a spreadsheet, because that was the problem from the beginning. We're still at the end. In the beginning, we can be anti-spreadsheet, but at the end, we always need to be pro spreadsheet at the end of whatever workflow that you're doing, because that's all people are going to want. we'll see how that works out this year. That's my prediction. We're going to develop the spreadsheet theory. People are going to discover it works. Well, this week, Brandon, do we have any bureaucracy to go over?
We do. We've always got some bureaucracy. So first, I want to let you know I sent some stickers to Andrew in the Ukraine, and an incredibly long street name that I just barely wrote on the envelope, but he explained to me why it was so long. And so I learned a little about Ukraine addresses, which is always fun. So if you would like a sticker, all you have to do is send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com, and I will send you a sticker anywhere in the world. Also, a couple things from the Slack. So in the Slack this week, Brian, he actually rebutted my review of the success equation. So he said that he didn't necessarily like it. He seemed a little bit repetitive and didn't buy the whole reversion to the mean hypothesis. So it's good review. I mean, I still like it. He said that it had some solid points. But listen, if you join the Slack, Kote, you know what you could do? You could go to the Books, Films, Music channel, and you could participate. You could either give your review of like why you liked it or why you didn't like it. And it's a good channel to like just find good books, good music, good films. Shockingly, it's named that, and it also includes that information. Also, a follow-up item from last week, Robert suggests in Slack that I proposed that the son-in-law was the least useful person when you're on like a family vacation with your in-laws. The son-in-law is the lowest rank. He came at it with another one, and I think it is true. He said one of the only people that ranks lower than the son-in-law in the pecking order is being the unmarried brother of the son-in-law. And I was like, yes, you're right. When you're the unmarried brother of the son-in-law and you're like at the family get-together, you are just basically a stranger. No one really cares about what you do. And the fact that like he said unmarried, I think is also funny because there's always like some questions like he's not married. He's like, what's going on? Why is he not married with his own family? Right? There's some questioning. So maybe it's even a little bit lower than stranger because people are kind of questioning that person's values. So I think, Robert, I think you're right. I think you found it. I think that is the actual floor. Unmarried brother of the son-in-law is the lowest ranking family member in any type of large gathering. And then finally, we talk a lot about other podcasts on the show. And I just want to let everyone know I created a couple other channels in the Slack. One for the Cloudcast. That's one by Brian, Gracely, and Aaron. They do a really good job. So if you want to talk about that one, there's a channel. And then, of course, Matt Ray runs a podcast called Cloud Native AF. So that's another reason to join the Slack is to get in there and talk about those podcasts as well as this one. So good to get everyone's feedback. Appreciate hearing everything from everyone.
There's also the Hallway Track podcast.
Oh, of course. Thank you, Kote. I didn't have that one written down. Good friends at the Hallway Track as well.
We've got a little podcast world over here, universe. That's very exciting. Well, there are I think so. That conference was rescheduled to May 23rd and 26th. I still need to figure out if I can make it to that, which would be fine. Now they have a Wisconsin version. Do you say Wisconsin? How do you pronounce that state, Brandon?
Wisconsin. That's what I say.
Is it like Wisconsin or Wisconsin?
I think it's just Wisconsin, but I don't know. Maybe someone from Wisconsin can email us and tell us,
Yeah. So they have a Wisconsin. See, God damn it. They have a Wisconsin version, and there's a call for papers open up for that. There's also DevOps Day Chicago is going to be May 10th and 11th. I think the CFP is still open for that. And then there is DevOps Days Birmingham, Alabama. Is coming up as well, and we're planning out our spring tours, and we'll have our big conference towards the end of the year as well. Now, with that, Brandon, what do you have to recommend this episode?
Well, you just mentioned the Hallway Track where they talk about cooking, so I'll just sort of like an homage to them. As I got an Anova precision cooker for my sous vide cooking over Christmas, and I was turned on to the reverse sear, which I think I recommended on here. It's a great way to make steak, but like. I would agree. The sous vide, this pressure cooker thing, or what is it called? Precision cooker, not pressure cooker. Basically it's just a thing that heats water to a certain temperature and keeps it at that. But it's really good. Like, yeah, you put your big proteins, and we've done pork, we've done beef, and you let it sit in there for an hour and at the appropriate temperature. I even got this thing so it's Wi-Fi enabled. I can be up here working and I can just see where it is. It's fantastic. And then you just sear it on the grill for a few minutes and you look, boom, professional grade steak, like restaurant quality. So if you're like me and you're just sort of like just kind of opening your eyes to cooking, this is a very simple thing. And it kind of makes you, I like it because like the food and the water kind of do all the work. There's really not much cooking involved, but you kind of can just take credit for it at the end. Like, look at this great thing I made, but you didn't really do that much work, which is the kind of cooking I like. So if you're ready to step into sous vide cooking, if I'm saying that right, who knows, get yourself an Anova precision cooker. Check it out.
Yeah, I think I finally worked on Kim where she thinks that's an acceptable thing for me to buy. I asked her recently, why have you never given me a sous vide as a gift? And she was like, yeah, that's a good question. I think at some point she thought it was absurd. But on that note, well, two things. One, your phrasing that the water and the whatever does the work. That reminds me, when I was trying to learn how to saw, my grandfather always told me that I was trying too hard and I had to let the saw do the work. And I never understood what the fuck he was talking about. And like that was too like, he grew up on a farm in Oklahoma, so I think he was more closely connected to wood and saws, so it probably made sense, but I didn't understand what that was. But also I've had some reverse sear adventures. Now I don't always reverse sear stuff because it's, we don't really get good beef around here, but I got a roast for Christmas, and I was trying to reverse sear it. And now the problem was, I'm going to cut to the chase. The problem was my meat thermometer was set in Celsius, and I was thinking in Fahrenheit. And so that explains why it was taking so long to achieve the correct. So basically, the dog had a nice Christmas little dinner there. It was thankfully it was like a European roast, which means it was probably like 2/3 of a pound or a pound, but about the size of a brick. Man, it did become a brick. But then Kim actually found a place to kind of mail order some really good beef. So she got me these 2 giant steaks, and I have successfully reverse seared cooked those. Those are great. That's the only, and they were like 2 inches thick. That's the only way to cook that stuff.
There you go. Now you know what? That's the perfect sous vide kind of thing. Step up, get to the next level. You'll like it.
So I have 2 recommendations. One is, I'm always bad at hustling my own company stuff, but this week we just released the 1.0 version of our Tanzu application platform. Now, there's a lot going on in this. It has Backstage in it, if you're interested, but it's basically I don't know. It's if you've heard of the idea that Kubernetes is a platform for building platforms. Well, here's a platform built on that platform. And it's got your 3SC in it, and it's got all sorts of also interesting like an API catalog and way of discovering that. It has all sorts of like tools for like monitoring your stuff in production, and it's all centered around like making Kubernetes easier to use for developers, but also having all the enterprise stuff that you need for governance and security and stuff like that. I'm giving it extremely short shrift. It has a lot of stuff in it, and I've started a series with. Well, hopefully I've started. We've recorded 1 episode that I haven't even published yet, Brandon. Does that count as starting something?
Sure. Why not? I'll take it. Yeah. Go for it.
And I've started a little series with one of my teammates, Cora, where we'll just kind of go over a lot of the components in there, and I'll get to ask her. It's really the secret of that is I've outsourced my educating myself. She goes in and figures out how everything works, and then I can just ask her questions, which is wonderful. She's a great teacher. So, however, if you just search around for it, check it out. If you go look at my Twitter, I've got lots of links to it, and you should check it out. It's good stuff. Now, I mean, of course, it's good stuff. My other recommendation is, I've been following that guy. Speaking of reverse here, that guy Kenji, 3 more names, who used to work at Serious Eats, and I love his videos. And I noticed in the American Chinese food that he makes, he's always putting MSG in it. And so finally, I like yourself, Brandon, I think, having grown up in the 70s and the 80s, I was told that MSG is toxic and causes cancer and you should never use it. And so like he seems like a cool guy. He doesn't wear shoes in his videos and he feeds his dog. And so like he uses it. So I ordered some. And I've started using it on things, and Brandon, it's amazing.
It's good. All right.
Yeah, like I had some popcorn that I was eating, and I put MSG on it. So good. And in fact, it's interesting because I haven't eaten MSG knowingly so much that now that I'm eating it, I'm like, I'm remembering some flavors. Like, like that. Remember
it's like an awakening from your childhood. You're like, I've had this before.
Yeah. Like you remember when microwave popcorn was first popular, and you would get all those little extra spices and things that you would put on popcorn. I think that was all just basically MSG with some paprika in it. was like the secret of a lot of that stuff. But you should, so, you know, again, not a doctor or a dentist. I don't know if MSG is terrible or not, but boy, it tastes good. You should do your own research, and you can just order it right off of Amazon. They just send you this kind of clinical bag of it, and it's just this white powder, and boy, it's good stuff. Just, I'm gonna have to stop myself from putting it in things. Do you think it would be good in salsa? I should try that out.
Why not? Go for it.
So if I survive my MSG experimentation over the next week, you'll be able to join us again next week for Software Defined Talk, which is the name of this podcast. Now, if you want to get the show notes for this episode, if you want to see how to spell MSG, and kind of definitely go check out the Tanzu application platform. We'll have links to all the stuff and things we mentioned at softwaredefinedtalk.com/339, this being episode 339. And you can join the Slack and check it out. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
All right. Well done.
Can I get back to eating this popcorn now, Brandon?
Go back to everyone. And then for everyone that was on in the beginning. So looks like Matt Ray did have a little family emergency. So we're just going to wish his wife, hopefully, a speedy recovery. Like she may be, I won't give any details. I'll let him talk about it next week. But it looks like something did happen. So hopefully.
Oh, that's too bad.
Hopefully it'll be okay for him. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough year. Starting off with like a lot of injuries, a lot of doctor's visits. I don't know. We're just 2 weeks in. Everyone's going to be halfway through their insurance deductibles. I guess for you guys, it's that you don't have deductibles.
No. We have a weird system. There is some kind of deductible. My son's checking it again. Okay. What's going on?
Do we have a recycling?
For plastic, you just put that in the trash. Are you done with your lunch there? He wants to show me the lunch that he made.
Okay.
Can I share it with my?
Show it up here. This is good content.
We're streaming live, so you stay off of the camera since you're just in your underwear.
Wow, it looks good. That looks like quite the lunch. Guy's a hungry son there. That's
what do we got there?
That's fantastic.
So we've got some wraps, salmon rolls, Cheetos, and some chocolate-covered biscuits, as they would say over here. Bananas. Yeah, that's great.
Did you make Cote? We're getting some real-time feedback to a comment on your lunch there, specifically the Cheetos. Someone chimes in here, says, MSG is safe for the vast majority of humans in reasonable quantities, as anyone who's eaten a bag of Doritos knows. So I like Doritos, and it must have MSG. So I'm just going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say Cheetos have MSG in them. So that's probably why your son likes it. So we'll check that
out. No, and then we do have something to sort. Hey, Cormac. Yeah? Would you eat a carrot with Nutella?
Cooked or
uncooked?
Uncooked.
Yeah. How about cooked? No. Okay, so there you go.
Neither
For the
way.
record, I know this was a discussion somewhere in the community, but he would eat a carrot with Nutella, but only uncooked carrot.
That's fair. I agree. We in my house we've agreed that like uncooked carrot, like you don't want to cook the carrot, just eat it. If you're gonna have carrots, just eat it without cooking them. That's where we stand.
If you roast the carrots, that's what you want. You want roast.
Yeah,
carrots.
I guess there must be a way to make them, but it probably requires more effort than most people are going to do, at least for home.
Yeah, that's true.
Just eat it. It's like broccoli. It's like, are you going to go to the effort to make this broccoli great, or is it going to be just soggy? If it's just going to be soggy, just give me the plain broccoli. Like, don't do anything.
Yeah, you get roast carrots, a little bit of dill. Now I'm thinking maybe a sprinkle of MSG. I think we might have something.
Tune in next week where the new podcast is MSG goes with everything. It's kind of like sous vide. Like once you get one, you're like, oh, can I sous vide this? Can I? You know what I should do? I'm putting MSG in everything I sous vide from now on. I'm like,
why don't you?
Not? What could go wrong?
You should just get like a cup of MSG and sous vide that. Someone just said sous vide MSG.
I don't know. Maybe someone said like Nutella. What if I Nutella? I guess I need I need something to like put the Nutella on in the MSG to like sous vide it. I'll have to come up with some. It could just at that point it could just be anything. It could just be a cucumber. It doesn't even matter. Like the flavor is just I just need something to hold it together. It's not even. It doesn't even matter what it is. So
That's right. That's good stuff.
Sounds great. All right, Cote. Well, we came in just perfectly on time, almost an hour and a half. So just what we wanted. So hey, thanks for everyone hanging in on the stream. It's always fun to have all of you join us. Enjoy doing it every week. Cote, do you have anything to say before we sign off on this one?
Well, I agree. We have a nice community to talk with, and it was enjoyable. And somehow, Brandon, we managed to make an episode after out of some slim news.
That's magical. Right. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Web3.